Hello everybody, my name is Stuart, and once again we're here with Frontline Foam to walk through the building process of the Spring Thunder. We've got all of our parts, printed parts here, already post-processed, and all of our hardware ready to go. And the final product that we're going for is going to look about like this. Spring Thunder is a seriously cool blaster. I really like it. The style points are very, very many, given that it shoots shells and it ejects them and everything, just like a real shotgun. It's a darn cool blaster. However, you may notice that this isn't a typical Spring Thunder. This one has an added on stock here that you can add on through the website. It also has this added rail. This is in another edition. And this bigger grip is also an add-on. So a default Spring Thunder won't have a lot of these things, including this muzzle. This muzzle's an add-on, but it'll have the base model and will still be completely functional, of course. So with that, we are going to go ahead and get started. To go about assembling this, what we're going to do is we're actually going to assemble kind of the modules that we have here individually, and we're going to do piece by piece. Then after we have all the modules assembled, we're going to assemble the internals, and then after assembling those internals, we will then slide the blaster together and get it all fixed up and ready to roll. Just some things to keep in mind is that I have a lot of experience working with these Nerf blasters, so I'm really hoping that what I say will help you guys avoid some problems that you may run into, but also be aware, I'm not perfect. I may mess something up here or there, something might not turn out exactly how we expected, but either way, we're going to get this blaster working, and it's going to be darn cool when it's all finished. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and assemble this part first. This is the extractor or ejector A, I believe it's called. And we're going to take these teeth, pull out the pin, put them into these slots, and then slip the pin in to secure them. Just make sure that on your part, it's nice and cleaned up, there's not too much gunk left in there, so that way it can actuate smoothly. As for the fit of the pins, it helps to test them out beforehand. Make sure that they actually will get in there. Don't put them all the way in there, it could be hard to get out later. But you want to make sure that you can, of course, get it all put together. Now we're going to take this one that is shaped like so and put it on the left side here. And we're going to feed our pin through. Make sure the spring is resting on this little notch here. We're going to try and get our pin through the piece and then into the other side. So that was a bit of a fight. We had to kind of realign the spring as we went, but we got the pin through the spring, through the print, or rather through the print, through the spring, through the print, and then clean in to the other side. Now we're going to go ahead and do the other side. Okay, so we've got both of our parts in here, and they are both spring-loaded and working properly. I did have to drill these out, and I did have to really fiddle with it for a minute to get these to fit. So just take your time, don't break anything, take it easy, don't force it, and this should come together nicely. So there's that. Alright, what we're going to do next is throw together this ejector port B. First, we're going to take this pin gently out of this ejector here, and we're going to lay the spring down in this trench. Just like that, and we're going to hold it down with our thumb. It's going to want to push out. Then we're going to take that pin that we had earlier, slide it down this hole, through the hole of the ejector, and then we're going to gently push it down, careful it can be sharp, into its position. There we go. The spring is now in place and the ejector is functional. When the shells come through the other side, this will push them out. Pretty important. We're going to go ahead and get the lifter ready. What we want to do is we want to make sure the support is out of there. And we're actually going to drill one side to 1/8 and the other side to 9/64. 1/8 is going to be tight around the pin, so it's going to keep it in place, and 9/64 is going to make it easy to put it in without breaking it. Now, the pin should slide pretty easily through this one, but not so easily into the next one, and that's fine. So we're going to go through the easy side into there, and now we're just going to tap that in. There we go. The reason we did that, once again, is because we didn't want these to get pushed inwards and then snap. So that's what we should have now. Now we're going to go ahead and put the lifter into its place. This can be pretty tricky, so try your best to follow along with what's going on. We're going to make sure these bunny ears are pointing outwards. And what we're going to do is actually take our 2-inch screw, make sure that you're looking at the conical side, not the hex side. We're going to put it through just about that far for now. And we are going to take our spring and we have to fold it in there and get it around the bolt. So, like I said, a little tricky. But what we're going to do is we're going to nestle these prongs of the spring on the pin there. And we're going to kind of pinch it and push it down and try and get one of the loops around the bolt. There we go, we got one. As you can see, because of the tension, it helps to kind of just actually literally screw the bolt across as you hold the other ring in place. And then as you come across, make sure you thread the next one. There we go. Just like that, we've got the screw going through both loops and the prongs up here. And then we're going to finish pushing the screw through. If it's too tough to push through, careful not to force it. Just give it a little bit of a twist and a push. And then it's going to pop out the other side. Just like that, boom. And now this is nice and spring-loaded, which is just what we want. I'm gonna go ahead and throw our nut on here. Careful not to tighten these too much. We want it to be secure, but we don't want to put any clamping force on the part, because that'll be important later, as there will be a lot of movement in this area. So with that done, I'm just gonna spread these out. There we go. And I'm actually going to snip the excess off of these guys. There we go. And that is what we're looking for. Okay. What we're going to be assembling next is this part. I believe it's called handle A. Now, something to note is the trigger rod as is will give you a pretty sensitive trigger on the Spring Thunder. It'll be almost a hair trigger sometimes. So something we like to do here is just shorten the rod ever so slightly. You can use these bolt cutters real quick and snip off just like 1/8 of an inch or even less. Make it a little bit shorter, and I'm gonna go clean this up on the belt sander, but that's what we do. We just shorten it a little bit so that way it's a bit less of a hair trigger later. Now we're gonna take this pin that's been snipped. We took off about 1/4 of the length of the normal pin, feed it through the big side, and now we're just gonna tap it into the other side gently. And there we go. The rod is nice and secure in the trigger. Now, we're going to put it in here like this, pointing towards the back. Make sure you're looking at the conical side, not the hexagonal side. And we're going to feed the bolt through here, through the bigger hole in the trigger, and then out the other side. And tighten that down. And remember, just like the other one, not too tight, because if it's too tight, it'll make the gun a little bit stiffer later. So I can already tell it's a bit tight, so I'm going to loosen it. Just so that trigger has a lot of freedom of movement. So there's that. All right, so what we're gonna do next is we are just gonna throw the trigger guard onto the handle. What we're gonna do is just throw these 2 1.25" screws through either side and then thread into a lock nut on the opposing side. And just like that. Okay, so now we're going to be throwing together the spring guide, and we're going to be attaching the spring guide to the back plate, and then we're going to be assembling the catch. So my recommendation for getting this put together is to take our back plate and take our catch spring. You're going to fit the prongs into this groove here, and then just lay it down kind of flat. Now we're going to take this screw and put it through the conical side and get it through the first coil there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get the catch into the mix. So you're going to want to push it in like so, and you're going to want to bring this hole to where the screw is and get the screw through that hole, all while keeping the spring in its place. There. We've got the screw now through the first coil and through the catch. And now we just need to push that coil down to where the screw is so we can get the screw to go through the second coil. There we go. Whew. And that's what we want. We want it to go through all 3. We're going to just throw on our lock nut at the end here. And there we go. Okay, now we're going to attach the spring guide to the base plate, to the back plate here. There's going to be these nuts in either hole. Make sure the holes are clean. And we're going to feed then screws through the back here into those nuts. And get those nice and tight. As you do it, you should be able to see the thread actually come through the nut there. And there we go, there's our catch mechanism. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and do the internals now. For starters, let's go ahead and start with this. What you're gonna do is you're just gonna slide your plunger catch into this plunger, the plunger rod into the plunger, and then you're just gonna take another one of these pins and just hammer it right in. There we go, nice and flush, made a bit of a mess. And we are going to put the thick O-ring on this one, just like that. So that's good for now, we'll set that aside. Next we're going to be working with this bolt here and this piece. We need to do a number of things here to get this rolling. First, just for ease, just to make things easier, we're going to put a nut in these 2 slots, and then we're going to just thread this screw in to those nuts on either side. We're not going all the way. The real reason we're putting these screws in is to keep the nuts from bouncing out. We just want to keep them in place. So now if I shake it, of course, nothing's coming out. What we're also going to do is we're going to take the small nut. Notice that there is one that is slightly smaller than the other ones. The small nut is going to go into this slot. Make sure it's pushed in all the way. And lastly, there is actually a slot for a nut right in there. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to slide that nut in there, make sure it's nice and flat. Hold it in and put this screw in. Now remember, we're just doing this so that way they don't fall out. We need to be able to move this around for now. What we're going to need to do is we are going to throw these O-rings, 2 of them, onto this part here, like so. And notice the hole here. This hole is going to line up with this hole here. But what we're going to do first is we are actually just going to spread some lubricant over the entire thing. Just like that, not too much. And then, to help me guide it in, I'm going to use this little screw here and put the O-ring, put the screw through the little O-ring that we have, and I'm going to slide this screw into this hole on this piece here. That's good. I'm going to leave it like that for now. What we're going to do is we're going to slide this piece into this hole, and then this screw is going to reach through and thread into that nut right there. And the reason we put these nuts in the first place is that way they stay where they need to be. So you kind of need to steer it as you go without getting your hands too messy. And gently push it in. Oh, there it is. Gonna push that out of the way. Perfect, just like that. Now we can finish threading this bolt all the way. And then get that decently snug. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna undo these 3 nuts, or 3 bolts, because we won't need them anymore for now. Then we're gonna slide this plunger tube like so over this spot. Just like that. And these screws are going to go back to tighten it down. There we go. So the screws aren't too tight. I don't want to end up buckling the aluminum, but they're tight enough so that way they don't protrude, because we don't want these rubbing on the inside of the blaster later. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put some lube on this. And I'm going to put a little bit more in the tube. And just slide that in. There we go. Now, we're going to put this O-ring into this spot here. Of course, it's not going to stay there, so we are going to use a dot of superglue. Just a few dots of superglue, not too much. I don't want it sticking out the sides. Just giving it even pressure so it sits nice and flat. And be careful not to touch that too much as it dries for the next few minutes. All right, now what we're gonna do is we're gonna put this little shell catch piece into this slot here, and it works a lot like the others. We're gonna gently pull that out, and we're gonna feed the spring into this hole back here and hold it steady. And this pin is going to feed through the top, through both the spring and the print. There we go. We got it all fit together. It was a little tricky. Just remember to make sure the pin goes through both the print and the spring and then back into the print. And make sure that this pin doesn't stick out the top here. If it does, you can just snip it a little shorter. But that's what we're looking for there. Now we'll go ahead and throw on this shell guide, I think it's called. Something that helps is to get rid of the elephant's foot from the bed of the print. It's a little rough right here, so I'm gonna just quickly shave it. There we go, that's a bit more smooth. And it's gonna be pretty decently tight, but it should be nice and straight with the tube. Sweet. Now we're gonna connect the push rods, the priming bars, we could call them. You'll notice that if the tube is level, one hole is lower than the other, and same with these, one hole is lower than the other. And they're also countersunk, so that explains which side goes where. So this one goes on this side, and what you do is you just throw your nuts into these holes, and then a screw on either side. And notice how, I don't know if you can tell, but you can tell that the priming bar seems to be pointing this way. If you're gentle, you can actually kind of pull it back to where it needs to be. There we go, it looks a little better, a bit more parallel. It depends on the tightness of these. And do be careful in general, if you're messing with these, they can bend. Especially this one, since it's a little bit thinner. But same story over here. So you can see here my nut is spinning in place, and while the screwdriver spins, so that doesn't help because I can't get it tight. What you can do is you can take a screwdriver or something and just shove it into that hole. I wouldn't recommend a knife. You can actually break your knife doing this, just so it anchors the nut there so you can finish tightening it. And there we go. We've got the priming bars on and they look pretty straight. The internals are looking good to go. So with those individual parts assembled and with the internals done, we're ready to start throwing together this blaster. What we're going to do first is we're going to take the screws and put them into these little parts here and thread them straight in. However, we like to put a drop of super glue on each screw before we fasten them, just because they tend to fall out and it helps with assembly anyways. Now we're going to take these and we're going to put them on the end of each of these threaded rods. Notice how there's still a little bit of room for these guys to attach here. So you're just going to thread those on. It should go on pretty easy, so don't cross thread it, and it should only go on a couple turns. We're going to do that for all four. Okay, so with that done, we're going to grab this front piece here, barrel A, I believe it's called. And we are going to put the long threaded rod through these top holes here. Just like that. Sometimes there's a little bit of filament left over in the hole, so you do kind of got to give it a push. What I'm going to do now is take these two pipes, they're actually PVC. You can get carbon fiber wrap if you want. It will be an add-on though. This slide. The long one is actually the magazine tube, the short one is the barrel. But we're going to slide these each into their spots. There we go. We're going to slide the pump on, and we're going to slide on this barrel B part. And remember to match up the words Spring Thunder on the side. Make sure you don't put it on backwards. There we go. Just a reminder, if you are installing rails on yours, what you'll want to do is as you slide these pieces together, is you're going to want to put your the nuts that you have into these spots before you slide everything on. Next, it's this piece called the coupler. There we go. Looking good. That slides okay. And now we'll go ahead and throw in the short rods. They go into the coupler holes. There we go. Now we're going to take our ejector A and slide that onto all four. Now we're going to slide on this piece here with the lifter. And we're going to put on this piece with the trigger. As you get close here, notice that this spring is sticking out. We want this spring to actually fit inside. So as we get closer, we need to push the spring up in there and then finish closing it. Now, the internals, of course, have a lot of friction going on. These bars are rubbing against certain parts. This can be rubbing against the inside. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna coat a lot of the surface area in lube. We're not gonna use a lot, because if you use too much, it'll actually be kind of gummy instead of smooth. Now this is going to be a little bit tough for you guys to see given my angle, but what's basically going to happen is this is just going to slide straight in from the back, pop out the other side, and then connect with the pump. However, I'm going to walk you through this audibly and then I'll see what I can show you as I go. But these priming bars are going to have to pass through these catches that we had earlier, these teeth. So as you thread them in, you might need to push or pull on these teeth to get it to feed into its slot. So remember, once again, don't force anything, just slide it in there gently and watch as you go to see what's in the way or what's not lining up. So we just got it slid into place. What we had to do as we went is we had to push this left rod into the groove, and then we had to push on this tooth so it popped out and let it pass. And the moment that happened, we had to switch to the other side and do the same thing because this catch is further back than the other one. Okay, so we've got it slid into place. We are going to now get the pump lined up, kind of like we did earlier. Get the parts into their grooves and help it slide on, just like that. And now we're going to feed the 1 3/4 screw to the other side. So the pump is all connected now. We're getting there. Next, we're going to slide the handle on just on the 2 bottom threaded rods. As we do this, make sure that this trigger push rod comes up above it, and in fact you can fold the trigger all the way back to get it past the trigger guard and then bring it clear up to its spot. Now we're going to take this piece and slide it on. There we go. As I did that, I made sure that this push rod came through this groove. It can't be up here, that won't work. Now we're going to take this part that says Shellington and slide it on next with this part pointing towards the back. Now what we're going to do is we're going to throw on this back plate and throw in the spring inside and tighten it all up. Spring, of course, is just going to feed straight down like that. And then this is going to feed around the spring and then over each of the threaded rod. Okay, so as you can see, the threaded rod are poking through these holes but aren't poking out, but we can see them. What we're going to do is we're going to take these cap looking things again, and we're going to slide them in and turn them to get them started. If you want, you can trim the threaded rod to the perfect length to use those same black screws that we used in the front and have black screws on either side. However, we found it's just it's easier and more forgiving to do it like this. Okay, so we've got each one threaded onto its rod, but not each one is done all the way. So what I like to do is I like to take a screwdriver to the front in either of the rods, of course, and hold a finger over here. And you just press down and give it a twist on the other side until it's decently snug, especially on the top ones. The top ones you want to be snug but not tight. The bottom ones, of course, they're different. They can actually be tightened quite a bit. If we tighten the top ones too much, the entire gun will actually curve upwards, and we don't want that. Okay, so we just finished tightening those down. If you are spinning the screw on this side and you can't get this to hold still so it continues to thread, try and pinch it as best as you can. Or if you need to, gently take some pliers and clamp them on either side to hold them down. But as soon as they get flush with the plastic, they should kind of grip the plastic themselves and let you finish tightening it down. So now we can twist it, and it's not moving too much. It's pretty sturdy right now. And we look down the barrel, which I can't really show. The table's not quite tall enough. Oh, barely. You can tell that it's decently straight now. And there it is, all tightened down. Next, what we're going to do is we are going to get the spring in the magazine tube working, and therefore, and then get this follower in place so we can have the magazine tube ready to go. So you're just going to pop this open. Surprise. What you're going to do is you're going to be nice and gently, you're going to feed this spring up into the tube. This is going to go around the spring, the end of the spring there, and then just go in right behind it, just like a shell. There we go, popped right in. And you can tell that it's working if you can go like that, and push it down, and it pops right back up. Now that we've got the magazine tube worked out and we've got these ends bolted together, there is one last thing we need to do. It's easy to forget, and that is putting a short screw into this hole to secure the trigger guard. So this feeds straight into the plastic, so just be gentle and careful not to strip it. There we go, nice and secure. So we're all finished. With that, let's cycle some darts through it, or some shells. So we can hold 4 in the magazine tube, and then if we pump it back and chamber 1, we can now fit 1 more. So in total, whoops, I didn't push that in all the way. In total, we can hold 5 rounds. So let's see how it goes. Looking good. And there you have it, the Spring Thunder.